The world is a mysterious place. Sometimes weird things happen that we don't have answers for. Those things have happened to me a handful of times in my life. 2 of those things happened to me when I was in the Army in South Korea, right up on the DMZ, and this is the story of that. I was a cavalry scout, 19 Delta. We did reconnaissance and security missions. I ended up in Deuce Tank in Camp Casey, South Korea. I got there in the spring of 2002 and I was there for a year. I was in a tank battalion, but I was in the light scout platoon. It was 10 Humvees, 5 with M250 caliber machine guns and the other 5 with Mark 19 automatic grenade launchers on top. When I was training, I trained to not engage the enemy. It wasn't our job to engage the enemy. It was my job to observe and report and let the tanks and artillery handle the enemy. As a result, I spent a lot of time just sitting in a concealed spot in the woods on a hilltop or on a hillside, just looking at a valley or looking at a big swath of land, just waiting for something to happen. It was on one of those late night listening posts, observation posts, and LPOP that my first story takes place. It was fall, it was cold, but there wasn't snow on the ground yet. We were well concealed before dark, and in the middle of the night sometime, one of us noticed a red light. It was then pointed out to the rest of us, and we all saw the same red light. Now this red light was a couple hundred yards down the hill from us in the woods, almost floating off the ground and slowly moving. The way I justified it at the time, it looked like a chem light in a soldier's helmet, and he was just walking through the woods. And you could faintly see the red light with the naked eye going through the woods in the middle of the night. We had excellent optics. Our job was reconnaissance, so we were supposed to look out at things. We had individual nods, individual NVGs. We also had infrared scopes on our squad weapons and our vehicle weapons. We had a javelin. We trained on the javelin way before it was popular 20-something years ago. The same javelin that's given the Russians a hard time in Ukraine. It has a reusable targeting pod called a Q, and that was one of the things we had to hump up and down all those hills, was a javelin or 2 and the Q. And with that Q, if you don't have it hooked up to a javelin, it's just a sighting system. And you can use it to really look at things far away at night, and especially from a hilltop. Perfect for where we were. None of our optics could see what was there. Nothing was there except for the light. There wasn't a person underneath it. There wasn't a drone with it. There was no vehicles. There was no explanation whatsoever. It was really bizarre. I have no explanation for what we saw, except for that the 3 or 4 of us in the squad all saw the same weird thing. We had a job to do, so it's not like we could have got out of our concealed position just to follow a red light. So we just had a Charlie Mike continue mission and sit in our observation point. The next day we told our experience to the Katusas in the platoon. A Katusa is a Korean augmentation to the US Army. They're Korean Army soldiers assigned to our platoon for things like interpretation and public relations, stuff like that. We needed them integrated into our platoon. But the Katusas told us we saw a mythical goblin known as a dokebi. Dokebi are depicted in architecture often. You see them carved into the relief around ceilings and rooftops. They have fangs, they have horns. They're almost demon-like sometimes. They are said to be magical. They're said to be mysterious and mischievous. They're often depicted wearing a cap that makes them invisible. Maybe that's why we didn't see anything. It was an invisible troll. The Koreans in our platoon were convinced that's what we saw. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't believe I saw a mythical goblin troll known as a dokebi. I'm literally a science teacher and I need evidence for things for me to believe in. I know I saw something that's unexplainable. It happened along the DMZ in South Korea. A few of us saw the exact same thing and we don't have an answer for it. My second unexplained encounter happened a few months later when it was winter time. There was snow on the ground this time, We were back in the field doing another training exercise, and I was driving one of those Humvees. There was only my squad leader next to me in the TC seat, nobody else in the Humvee with us, no other vehicles on the road with us either. I'm driving down a dirt road, there's snow on the ground, the woods are on both sides of me, and there's a slope, there's a hillside going sloping down to my left. So I'm just driving along when all of a sudden something very fast, large, dark, and furry jumped out of the woods from my right to my left going downhill, went right across the road in no time flat. I didn't even have a chance to stop or brake, it happened so quickly. After it happened, I turned to my squad leader and together we just said, "What did we just see?" It looked like a large black wolf. Wolves used to be plentiful in the Korean Peninsula, but now they're almost completely gone. They're not yet listed as expatriated or locally extinct, but they're really close. I have to believe what I saw was a black wolf living near the DMZ in South Korea. Maybe that's not as fun as a Korean goblin, the dokkaebe, but it's still mysterious and I'm still not sure what it was I saw. Thanks for listening to my story. I have lots of them from an interesting life I've lived. I can share more if this video does well, and I'll see you next time.